HHSRS changes coming on the 23rd of June 2026 and what every landlord needs to know. So hello everyone and good morning and welcome back to Porter's Estate Agents Landlords podcast. I'm Sean Porter from Porter's John Dean Estate Agents, and today I want to talk to you about some important information coming into effect on the 23rd of June regarding the Housing, Health and Safety Rating System, more commonly known as HHSRS. Now, before anyone starts to panic, and I'm going to need a coffee before I go on, let me reassure you, if you're already maintaining your property, carrying out regular inspections and taking health and safety seriously, then these changes shouldn't create major problems for you. However, there are some significant changes to enforcement, and landlords need to be aware that local authorities will have stronger powers and the potential to issue civil penalties of up to £40,000 where serious hazards are identified. So let's look at what's changing and, more importantly, what it means for you as a landlord. So what indeed is HHSRS? So the Housing, Health and Safety Rating System is the government's method of assessing potential health and safety risks in residential properties. It's designed to identify hazards that could affect the health, safety or well-being of tenants. The important thing to understand is that the actual standards themselves are not changing dramatically. And the majority of landlords and majority of hazards that landlords that they've faced before, they are going to manage in exactly the same way. So what's changing is how those hazards are assessed, categorized, and also enforced. The biggest change. So historically, hazards identified during a council inspection were graded using categories 1 and 2, with a more detailed A to J scoring system sitting behind those assessments. But from the 23rd of June, hazards will instead be classified as high risk, medium risk, or indeed low risk. Where a high risk hazard is identified, councils will generally be expected to take enforcement action. For medium and low risk hazards, councils will have more discretion regarding how they actually proceed. So this means landlords need to be increasingly proactive because issues that may previously have gone unnoticed or indeed unresolved could now attract greater scrutiny. Harder word that. The hazards aren't disappearing. One misconception I've heard recently is there's a lot of new hazards being introduced. Well, that's not actually the case. The list has simply been streamlined and also condensed. Several existing categories have been merged, reducing the overall number from 29 to 21 hazards. The risks themselves are largely the same risks landlords have been dealing with for year after year. Historically, the most common and serious hazards found within private rented properties have included falls, excess cold, fire safety issues, damp and mould. Now that one always pops up, and I suspect that won't change anytime soon. Areas landlords should pay particular attention to now are some of the newly merged categories that are especially relevant for today's landlords. So let's have a look at those. So they include indoor air pollutants, and this category includes carbon monoxide, smoke, gas exposure, chemical pollutants. This reinforces the importance of regular gas safety checks, carbon monoxide alarms, and ensuring properties are well ventilated. Then we fall on to domestic hygiene. This goes much further than simply keeping a property clean, as the title may suggest. So it includes areas such as cooking facilities, washing facilities, drainage, sanitation, and of course, pest infestations. If a tenant reports issues in these areas, they should never be ignored. Then we look at what we call falls on the level. So this includes trip hazards, uneven flooring, slippery surfaces, hazards associated with bathrooms and showers. Falls remain one of the most common causes of injury in a residential property. So then we move on to the serious points, fires and explosions. This is probably the area receiving the greatest attention under the updated guidance. Traditionally, landlords thought of fire hazards as simply fire and smoke. Well, the new definition is much broader. It now includes exposure to uncontrolled fire, smoke and fumes, explosion, structural collapse resulting from fire explosion. The wider definition will trigger immediate council action. It will need to be resolved. You'll need to consult with fire and rescue services before taking enforcement action. As a result, landlords should be paying close attention to smoke alarms, fire doors where applicable, escape routes, electrical safety, and general fire risk management. So let's move on to collisions, entrapment, and ergonomics. Now that's a word I find really hard to say. So this covers situations where tenants may become trapped or injured by, say, windows, doors, poorly positioned fittings, faulty fixtures. They may sound minor, but under the HHSRS system, they can still represent genuine safety risks. So my advice to landlords, the message I'd like landlords to take away from today is simply quite simple. If you are already complying with current health and safety guidance under HHSRS, you don't need to completely reinvent the wheel. What you do need to do is to remain vigilant. Carry out regular property inspections. Deal with maintenance issues promptly. Respond quickly to reports of damp, mould, leaks, trip hazards, or fire safety concerns. Keep detailed records of inspections and repairs. And most importantly, don't wait for a council inspection to identify a problem. The landlords who face enforcement action are often those who have often ignored issues for months or sometimes even years. The full list of HHSRS hazards for anyone who wants a complete overview and the hazards which are covered under HHSRS include. Now, I'm hopefully going to speed this part of the video up because it's really long and the list is long. So let's have a look. Psychological hazards. Damp and mould growth, excess cold, excess heat, asbestos and manufactured mineral fibres, biocides, carbon monoxide and fuel combustion products, lead, radiation, uncombusted fuel gas, volatile organic compounds, crowding and space, entry by intruders, lighting, noise, infection hazards, domestic hygiene, pests and refuse, food safety, personal hygiene, sanitation and drainage, water supply for domestic purposes, accident hazards, falls associated with baths, falls on a level surface, falls associated with stairs and steps, falls between levels, electrical hazards, fire, flames and hot surfaces, collision and entrapment, explosions, position and operability of amenities, structural collapse and failing elements. So as you can see, even after that speeded up list, it's a substantial list and almost every property will contain some form of hazard. So a final thought. It's important to remember that the purpose of HHSRS is not to create a hazard-free property. That's frankly impossible. Every property will contain some degree of risk, as life does. The objective is to minimise risks as far as reasonably possible and to ensure properties remain safe places for tenants to live. The overwhelming majority of landlords are responsible, professional people who want to provide good quality homes. However, with penalties now potentially reaching £40,000 and councils expected to take a more proactive approach towards serious hazards, this is not something to ignore. Landlords can choose to operate on their own or ignore these rules. But if you need help, if you're unsure whether your property meets the new standards, or if you'd simply like peace of mind before these changes come into place, we'd be happy to help. At Porter's John Dean Estate Agents, we've been helping landlords for over 40 years. We can carry out a landlord health check, identify any potential concerns, and help you stay compliant within the latest regulations. Feel free to get in touch with either myself, Sean Porter, or one of the Porter's John Dean team. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry it went on a bit, but it's important. And we'll see you on the next Porter's John Dean podcast. Thank you.